Okay, I see it starting. Oh, the title is Nothing New, Just News.
Nothing nude.
Nothing new, just news.
Please send me on the Skype.
Okay.
Okay, are you ready?
Ready when you are.
Yes. We are going to live now.
Hey, good morning. It is a beautiful Tuesday morning, and it is July 7th. Oh no, July 6th. I'm rushing this month through. And today's topic, nothing new, just news. And we're going to dive into things that have been happening yesterday and a little bit before. But this is nothing new. The history of what's been happening, it makes this nothing new. It's just news. And we're going to be back right after this break.
Okay, we are on break.
All right. Now you go with the Mount Laurel protest video,
Okay.
and you have to share it so I can see it. Then I know when to come in.
You want to see the video?
Yeah. Then I know when to, or at least let me hear it so I know when it stops, when to come in.
Okay, you mean to say I have to share screen with you?
Oh, I gotta give you permission to share screen. Right. There you go. Okay, you're gonna have to blow that up or enlarge that so that people don't see all the other stuff.
Okay.
Now enlarge in the little box on the right of the YouTube.
Sorry?
The enlarge screen box on the right
Okay.
of the YouTube pic. Yeah. No, next one. There you go. You got it. Now, can you get that larger?
Zoom in.
No. Picking. And you're gonna have to do your sound too. I think your speakers. There we go. Okay.
I will make it zoom in on OBS.
Okay. How much time we have left?
Uh, 10 seconds. Five, four, three, two, one.
Latest clip. suburban, metropolitan. Now, here is a neighbor of Mount Laurel confronting his black neighbor. Now, you can see that it's a very spirited confrontation in which he had called him the N-word multiple times. He told the neighbor that, you know what, you need to go back to where you belong. and the worst thing about it is this is the most disgusting part of American white privilege. He feels privileged to tell a man who's paid for his house that he needs to go back to where he belongs. He belongs in the house that he paid for. And now, even though that they are filming this and recording this, he is so cavalier in splurting off the N-word, even to the point of them calling the police. Right? And you'll see when the police comes in there, he tells the police, look, I'm tired of it. You talk to that N. I mean, and what, so, and here's the thing about this guy. He tells the camera, he goes right into the camera and gives his address and says, don't worry about it. Come and talk to me. Well, no, because of his arrogance of race. Oh, no, by the way, that's him, what you just saw, that's him spitting on the man. Spitting on the man. Now, I have to commend this black man, because anybody that comes in my face like that, yelling, screaming, spitting, calling me the N-word, and telling me that, you know, I need to go back to where I belong, I don't think that I would be able to have that level of restraint and discipline that this man has and just sit there and take it. So it would be a totally different result, believe me, than what this man is actually giving him. So, now, after this video of this rant goes viral the next day. Stop the video. Now, the next day, in beautiful Mount Laurel, New Jersey, sparks a protest. Peaceful protest. Hundreds of people of color go to the address in which he on social media said to do what he requested. They went to talk to him. Now, I guess because of all of these people of color at his front door, you know, this tough guy against this passive African American male, you know, was so tough. Yet, and you know, look, here's my address. Come talk to me. Now, people come to talk to him, and Mr. White Privilege doesn't come out of his house. No. So then, you know, he calls the police and tells them that, you know, he is under attack by a bunch of N's. And of course, the Mount Laurel Police, which Mount Laurel Police is not exactly African American friendly. Trust me, but we're going to dive into that history in just a second. They come out in full tactical riot gear with shields. 2 police officers, you know, holding their guns while people protest at his door. Now, Mr. Tough Guy now has police there. Now he wants to come out and talk to the people. Oh, no. You couldn't talk to them without the police. See, that's the power of white supremacy and white privilege. See, it's backed by the simple fact that the belief that, wait a minute, the police will save my white behind. Oh, by the way, he told the black man, look, I can do whatever I want, and there's nothing that you can do about it. White privilege. And this is nothing new. This is just news. Why? Because black neighbors in that development have had multiple encounters with this one man. The police did nothing until hundreds of black people show up and protest. Then he gets arrested and charged for his racial tyrants. But in Mount Laurel, it's nothing new. Racism, or the actual not being black people friendly, is nothing new in Mount Laurel. Let's look at it. And the township of Mount Laurel, it's located at the intersection of right off the New Jersey Turnpike near 295, also right off of Route 38, Route 70, and 73. Mount Laurel in 1963 was dedicated to a major development plan known as the PUD, the Planned Units Developments, which were intended to develop more than 10,000 homes and industrial parks, commercial centers, and it was designed to transform Mount Laurel at that time, which was primarily farmland, particularly blueberries, and to an affluent suburb. Now, the problem with this was that in this massive plans of this great society, there were no affordable housing in that plan. Not one affordable house was in that plan. 10,000 homes, not one affordable house. Well, the neighbors got wind of that, and part of that plan took what was called eminent domain. Eminent domain is where a municipality therefore deems it essential to take over particular privately owned property for its development purpose and growth. Well, here was the problem with the eminent domain and their great society. Their massive development scheme in Mount Laurel basically had eminent domain over historic black communities. I'm talking about historically black communities. We're talking about black communities, and that's been in the township since the Revolutionary War. George Washington. We're talking about historically black communities that trace their lineage through there are still portions and houses that were safe haven during the Underground Railroad and slavery. We're talking about historic black communities because this was now a destination point for those escaping slavery to be free. They're going to tear all that down for 10,000 homes to develop this new white society. So part of the new white society is getting rid of the black people. This is nothing new. This racism is nothing new for New Jersey. One of the big reasons that they were all in that little particular area without any representation was because of a New Jersey law. See, most states have a county board of representatives, of governors, which are called commissioners. In the state of New Jersey, they were called freeholders. A racist term, freeholders. Why? Because to run for that office, you had to be free from holding liens. A majority of the historic black community were sharecroppers, which means that they didn't own the property, they were in debt to the landowners. So, in terms of running for office or even voting, they couldn't do it, which means they had no representation. Incredible that it took from that point to generations for them actually to become landowners and own their own farms. They were at least 3 generations behind in terms of getting wealth from the farm. And then, of course, during the 60s and the 70s and the 80s, where the farming actually died because Americans decided to go to other countries for their produce because it was cheaper, they suffered just as much and more as the white farmers. Thank God for President Joe Biden. And part of his economic restructuring program gave the largest amount of money and transference of wealth to black farmers in our nation's history. We're talking about black farmers who have consistently been oppressed, not being able to get loans, grants, not being able to get food contracts with major distributors or quote unquote grocery stores, where black people tend to spend 48% of their money. Not only do we spend 48% of our hard-earned dollars in these white-owned stores that do not buy their products from black farmers, they are an average of 9 miles from the black communities. So you have to travel to give them your money so that they can disenfranchise you with high rates and not support the black businesses. Let me digress. So now they decided this massive scheme, which therefore went to court, Superior Court, and it went to eventually it went to the U.S. Supreme Court and the Board of Education, and they did this under the Supreme Court landmark in the same ruling and principle or precedence as Brown v. the Board of Education. Now, here's the thing. In terms of this development was private-public funds, which basically means the developer threw in some money. The township used the tax dollars to throw in the rest. Now, there is a law and rule that anytime you are using public funds, which is therefore by tax dollar, it goes through a government actual mandate or all laws and regulations, which is one of the big reasons why public-private funding consists of a great deal of union jobs, because, well, one of the biggest supporters, one of the biggest people that the unions support are politicians that keep them in union jobs. So, doing all of this government regulations, and you have to follow every government rule, this development in beautiful Mount Laurel was not following the rule of fair and equal housing. So, after the Supreme Court, smacked them down, the struggle continued in Mount Laurel to now we're talking 1983, in which they developed in Mount Laurel, quote unquote, the historic Fair Housing Act. Now, here's the thing. Even though that now the Supreme Court, now they have a precedent or law on the Fair Housing Act, but based on the model of Mount Laurel. Oh, by the way, one of the biggest supporters with getting this to the Supreme Court was the NAACP. Thank you, guys. You were on the ball. So what they came up with is this. Since the court says that now they have to do it, especially because they're using, taxpayer dollars. They said this: we're going to have 3 tracts of land, and they squeezed out 20 acres. 20 acres, right? You know the size of the total project? 22.4 miles. They squeezed out 20 acres for affordable housing. So, out of 14,300 acres, we're going to put aside 20 acres. So they took it to court again. Why? Because the 20 acres does not basically support the existing 13% of the black population. So now 5 years pass, and then the Supreme Court comes up again. Clark versus the Township of Mount Laurel. And of course, the Supreme Court upheld that. But this is nothing new. Racism is nothing new in Mount Laurel. We're going to look at a couple other things that you may not know about. And we're going to look at that right after this break.
After this break, I have to
Our Father,
play any
which
video.
art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom
Walter
come,
Scott
thy
death.
will be done.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי
Walter
רבה,
Scott death.
בעלמא דברי חירותי וימליך מלכותי.
Okay.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله.
Our often repeated prayers,
Although we may be different,
Yet similar.
as we reach out to our Creator,
we offer all praise.
And we seek forgiveness.
we ask for peace in our hearts, in our minds, and in our spirits. Amen.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Playing video.
Remembers this video. This is at the height of unarmed black men being killed by the police. This is actually a video of former officer Michael Slager. And you want to know, how does this relate to Mount Laurel? Well, this video was shot in South Carolina, where it was a traffic stop. Officer Slager had a run-in with this man before. So you see this man, knowing that it's Officer Slager, he gets out of his car and he runs for his life, in which Officer Slager pumps 9 bullets into a man running. And you also see in this video, after he shoots him, he walks back. He picks up the taser. He walks over to the dead man's body. He drops the taser and he cuffs him. Another cop shows up and sees this quote-unquote setup. Yet, Officer Slager, in his report to the police, is that he pulled him over for a traffic stop. The huge, vicious, violent black man. Yeah, the one that was running, yeah, vicious, violent black man. Basically, went after the Officer Slager's taser. Took his taser from him. Disarmed him of a taser. Now, if I know that a cop is about to whoop my behind, the one thing I'm not going to reach for is the taser. So he took his taser. The officer in his report said he feared for his life. He feared for his life. He feared from a black man running from him, and which he engaged in fire. So if you're fearing for your life and you shoot someone in the back, how do you claim self-defense? I mean, he has to be a bad black man to whoop somebody's behind with his back turned. Yeah. Officer Slager was a former police officer in Mount Laurel. At that time, Mount Laurel was such a prejudiced police force that they attacked and harassed everything black. You think that Officer Slager fits well in Mount Laurel? No. He was too radical for them. So he lost his job, of course, because of all the complaints against him, and gets a job being a police officer in South Carolina. Now you know why they want to change the laws with the George Floyd bill. Because this happens a lot. Police officers with bad records in other cities go to other cities and get jobs as police officers, in which they have now, because they have gotten away from the injustices, the brutality, and the abuse of power and force, they go into other cities and they continue on with the same thing. That's why we need a national data of police officers, so that they cannot lose their job here and get the same job there. Because this happens most of the time. So, not only is Mount Laurel considered by a lot of black people one of the racist cities because of their consistent harassment, pulling over, tickets, and citations, one of the big reasons is because of this man. You remember him? Philadelphia's quarterback, Donovan McNabb, lived in Mount Laurel. Now, at the height of Donovan McNabb's career, he was the 5th recognized face in America, living in Mount Laurel. He got pulled over for more traffic tickets than any black man in the city of Mount Laurel. I mean, you would think that after they knew him as a resident of Mount Laurel. No. They pulled him over. You'd think that, oh, well, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was you, Mr. McNabb. Okay. He's in a Bentley. When I was in Mount Laurel, there were only 3 black people that owned Bentleys. 2 of them, one of them was a coach of an NBA team. The other one was a high-profile athlete, and the other one was me. Pulled over constantly and given tickets. Not only that, but Donovan had his own private security guard because his place was broken into. So not only did they, not protect him, but he had his private security guard who stayed in an SUV outside of his home. Do you know the cops pulled him over too? I mean, harassed the security officer every day out there. What are you doing? The same thing I was doing yesterday, Pinky. Constantly. But that wasn't the reason why they considered them to be a racist police force. Biggest thing is that they just made quota. At that particular time, the Mount Laurel police force had 1 black officer. Yeah, and if you think he was like a pro-black guy, no. He was like the police version of Clarence Thomas. Thank you, white people, for giving me this job. I'm going to do everything to help you keep them darkies down. That's what we're going to do. Yeah. So, that is why we're saying that this racism in Mount Laurel, nothing new. Nothing new. This has been happening and continues to happen. Yet, it's just news. Why is it just news? Because people now are fighting back using this. The greatest invention to the African American experience is the cell phone with a camera. Because you can now record and post on social media all the injustices. You can show people the actual truth of what happened so that the prosecutors do not go by the fictitious police reports of shootings. You can show a man throwing racial slurs at a very passive and nonviolent black man standing in front of his home trying to protect his family. You can show the truth because they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Then a video shows a whole lot of truth. You show the videos and that changes everything about the perspective of how they see us, how they see people of color, and what they truly believe. The police reports or the videos that you have. And most important, as they did, the protesters did, stand up. Stand up for the injustices. I know. It's difficult. It's a burden. It's frustrating. And it's a huge drain, both emotionally and physically. But we can no longer be silent. We can no longer say someone else will take care of this. We have to stand up and take care of this for ourselves. As the residents of Mount Laurel, the black residents of Mount Laurel said, this is nothing new. We filed lots of reports. They did not bring charges on this man until hundreds of black people stood up, rose up, and protested in front of his door. Thank you, by the way, for giving everybody the address. You are a real genius. That's when they brought charges against him. Oh, by the way, there are other videos, but right now they are police property because they go into the discovery of that he will give to his defense. Standing up. It doesn't take a great deal. We just gotta stand. We don't have to stand with a great deal of force. We just gotta stand. We don't have to stand with a great deal of eloquence and speech like Reverend Dr. King. We just have to stand. God, let's stand up, because you know what? I'm so tired of seeing this. Let's stand up so that they know that we're not taking this and we won't have to go through this. Let's stand up, because God forbid I would hate for that to be my son. That some white privileged, empowered, entitled jackass comes in front of his door, which he paid hard-earned money, more than what the white man paid for his house, mind you, and tell him, go back to where you belong. Let's take a stand. Next, after the break, we're going to talk about the two-time president of the NRA giving a high school commencement speech. We'll be right back.
After this ad, I have to play the video Lost Class.
Dr. Laura Lewis has over 15 years of experience in helping couples heal by building trust, cultivating intimacy, and enhancing communications. Her book, Marital Peace, is a valuable tool to support couples through the challenges of marriage. Her therapeutic approach is influenced by worldwide training in Brazil, Mexico, London, and Haiti. Watch for her Fridays on Roku and YouTube. That's Couples Therapy with Dr. Laura Lewis.
We have 10 seconds. Yes. 3, 2, 1. Video is
Okay, now, strange enough, that is none other than the two-time president of the National Rifle Association, David Cain. Now, David Cain has been instrumental in every bill, starting with Columbine. Because after that, they found out that this kid had some real emotional issues and background checks. So, not only that, in terms of background checks, David Cain was instrumental in sending a lot of money to defeat the bill of President Biden. I'm sorry, at that time he was Vice President Biden and President Barack Obama. David Cain has been traveling across the world talking about, more guns, less crime. But let's look at it. One of the biggest vehicles used for crime is a gun. He has been going around stating that, that the argument that reducing or giving background checks can save 3 million lives. He's been arguing that no, it doesn't save lives because people are going to kill people no matter what. Yet, we find out the biggest committer of gun violence are people who have some mental issues, restraining orders. So all of those things could be found out in the background check, in which he has spent billions of dollars to defeat that bill. Of course, the NRA gets a lot of their money because they're a nonprofit org. It's called dark money. So they don't have to report who they get their money from. Let's think about it. a group that's supporting guns, which means that if they're supporting guns, people are going to buy guns. So if I manufacture guns, I want to give a lot of money to these people who are championing guns. Right? Right. Well, they invited Mr. Cain, two-time president, champion of guns, to quote-unquote James Madison High School. Now, James Madison, as you know in the video, was the architect of the Second Amendment right, which is the right to bear arms. Keep in mind how that amendment has been bastardized. I mean, completely. It's so far from the original intent of James Madison that it's not even funny. See, it was the right to bear arms for self-protection. Protection against two things at that particular time that they needed protection from. One was the British, and two was the American natives in which they forced off their land. Let me digress. So, James Madison High School invited him to come up and talk to the 3,044 graduates of the class of 2021. This is how much of a genius Mr. David Cain is. After the graduation, they gave him an award, the James Madison Award, for upholding this Second Amendment. And this is how how his genius is shown. First and foremost, did anybody ever remember or heard of a high school graduating class with 3,044 children? So, by the way, if he did his background checks, he would have knew there's no such high school as James Madison High. None. Nowhere in America. None. He was set up by a group called Change the Ref. And the 3,044 graduates, that represents the 3,044 children who died at the hand of gun violence. 3,044 died right then. And he talks to them in his commencement speech. Follow your dreams. Support James Madison and his principle to bear arms. 3,044 who will never, ever follow their dreams. Lives cut short because of people like Mr. David Cain, who would rather stand up and support the gun manufacturers, who would rather fight against legislation that would increase or give them the rights to do background checks, who would rather keep them from these backdoor deals at these gun shows, putting guns in the hands of people who have no good intent of protection, but using them offensively to cause harm. 3,044 lives that he stood before and preached to those empty chairs, because those children will never hear those words, nor will they ever fulfill the life so that they so richly could have done. 3,044. One of them could have cured cancer. One of them could have won Grammys, sports athletes, Emmys, Oscars. The potential of their life taken away because he decided to do what's fundamentally wrong than what's right for our country, what's right for our children. Well, thank you, David Cain, for just being such a great role model and a supporter of America. We'll be back right after this break.
Okay, we are clear. Yeah.
You opened a small business. That's a great way to have
Okay.
generational wealth. If you're a minority business,
I have
you may
sent
be
you the
struggling
payment
to keep
request.
your head above
Did you receive
water.
any email?
Why? In 2019, the black community spent $1.5 trillion because the black dollar
Yeah.
lifespan, 28
also
days
sent you
Asian
this
communities, 19 days Jewish communities, 6 hours a month in the black communities.
Do you have time
Major
after this
brands
show?
target the black media,
Connect
TV,
them.
and radio. That's why blacks are brand shoppers. That's why they get a big slice of that $1 trillion pie.
last of the-
Your business needs exposure. You got quotes from cable networks and local radio. They charge a lot of money for a little exposure. Networking and social media is a full-time job to get part-time money. Let's look at a successful black business model. Remember Soul Train? It was a new black TV show that Johnson Cosmetics increased